Ceasefire protests all across the West today, blocking freeways, bridges, and airports, what organizers describe as an economic blockade to free Palestine. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. These demonstrations were part of a nationwide day of action designed to bring commerce to a halt and end U.S. aid to Israel. In Washington, protesters blocked the main road into the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport late this afternoon. Here is a live look at the airport now, showing the activity there. Law enforcement has kept a presence in the area for hours, and just about an hour ago, authorities reopened lanes on the SeaTac Airport Expressway. And there were similar protests in other West Coast states. In Eugene, Oregon, police arrested dozens of people after they blocked traffic on Interstate 5 today. In Southern California, protesters marched to the Port of Long Beach this afternoon. And some of the most serious disruptions were in the San Francisco Bay Area. Protesters blocked traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge and a major Oakland freeway for hours. More than 36 people were arrested there.
We are saying that enough of our tax dollars from the United States, one of the largest ally of Israel, we don't want our money going to Israel anymore.
Protest is just not going to help any child in Gaza, or any sympathy. And it's a complicated situation. I know that, but to hold up people who are genuinely trying to get to work doesn't help anybody.
And today's demonstrations highlight the growing calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. And the situation in the Middle East is much more complicated tonight after Iran's weekend attacks on Israel. As Fox 11's Hal Eisner reports, Southern California law enforcement agencies are maintaining a heightened presence around sensitive religious institutions.
How concerned are you?
Pretty concerned.
Rabbi Mendel Lipsker of Chabad of Sherman Oaks hopes the Iranian drone and missile attack on Israel over the weekend won't translate into trouble here. But he says they've been beefing up their security at the synagogue ever since the Hamas attack on Israel October 7th.
We have more security cameras, we have more security personnel, we have more volunteers, and LAPD is really giving their extra measure.
LAPD says it is closely monitoring what's happening in the Middle East.
Happy to report there are no credible threats to Los Angeles County that we're aware of at this time, but that could change.
LA County Sheriff Robert Luna says his agency is being vigilant.
We make sure that our patrol resources are keeping a very close eye really on all religious institutions, not just Jewish, but Muslim, Christian, just across the board. We want to make sure everybody's safe.
We have been monitoring for any sort of potential threats here.
Alexander Zaistev heads up the Security Community Initiative at Jewish Federation Los Angeles. He says they can't predict what Israel might do. There's also Passover. That starts Monday at sundown.
And how does Passover play into this?
Well, Passover has historically been really sensitive in the sense that we've had many attacks occur throughout the U.S. on Passover.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen, many attacks taking place against Jews and Jewish institutions and Jewish-owned businesses since the beginning of the war between Israel and Hamas.
And while Dov Waxman with UCLA's Nazarian Center for Israel Studies thinks the risk is low, he also thinks the landscape could change.
Do you anticipate a response from Israel?
I do. I think it's likely that Israel will respond despite all the pressure that Prime Minister Netanyahu is now under.
And like so many others have told us, Rabbi Lipsker is hopeful but cautious.
I'm alert and vigilant.
And that was Hal Eisner reporting for us. Today, President Biden reaffirmed his support for a ceasefire in Gaza to rescue hostages.
We're committed to a ceasefire that will bring the hostages home and preventing conflict from spreading beyond what it already has.
Those comments at the White House come as Israel weighs how to respond to Iran's drone and missile attacks. Iran launched that assault over the weekend in response to a suspected Israeli strike that killed 2 Iranian generals in Syria 2 weeks ago. The Israeli military says it intercepted 99% of the missiles with the help of military allies, including the United States. The country's military leaders say they will respond, quote, at the time that we choose.
If someone wants to annihilate us, wipe us off the map, we're not just going to sit idly by.
This attack failed because it was defeated by Israel, by the United States, and by a coalition of other partners committed to Israel's defense.
While the U.S. claimed credit for shooting down some of those Iranian missiles, President Biden has urged Prime Minister Netanyahu to show restraint. Vice President Kamala Harris is back here in the West, visiting another key battleground state ahead of the November presidential election. She was in Las Vegas today discussing the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That legislation passed in 2022 and toughened background checks for young gun buyers and made it easier for authorities to take weapons from people deemed dangerous. A new rule tied to the legislation announced last week makes clear anyone who sells firearms predominantly to earn a profit must be federally licensed. During her discussion with voters, she stressed the need for gun owners to store weapons securely.
You know, the numbers that I have seen suggest that as many as 75% of school shootings resulted from a gun that was not secured. Tragically, as many as 80% of youth suicide is a gun that was not secured.
The next stop on the vice president's tour has not yet been made public. She is expected to stay the night in Los Angeles, where her family has a home. The hush money trial of former President Trump got underway today in New York, and the first day ended without any jurors being chosen. Dozens of jurors were dismissed after saying they could not be impartial. Trump faces 34 felony counts alleging he falsified business records. This case centers on a $130,000 payment his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, made to adult film star Stormy Daniels to keep her from talking about an alleged affair with Mr. Trump ahead of the 2016 election. Prosecutors say Trump falsely logged those repayments as legal fees. The former president calls the case a politically motivated witch hunt.
It'll be historic. It's solemn. But by moving his campaign to court, what he's doing is posing extreme challenges to the American legal system, the American constitutional system, to American politics. And that's just the way he wants it.
Trump has pleaded not guilty and denies the affair. This is just one of 4 criminal cases he is now facing. Many legal experts believe it may be the only case to face a jury before the November election. In New Mexico, the armorer from the movie Rust has been sentenced to 18 months in prison for her role in the fatal shooting on that movie set. Prosecutors say Hannah Gutierrez-Reed loaded a live round of ammunition into a revolver, which actor Alec Baldwin ultimately fired at cinematographer Helena Hutchins in 2021. Hutchins was killed. Baldwin says he was not aware the gun was loaded. The judge today ignored Gutierrez-Reed's plea for probation, giving her the maximum sentence for involuntary manslaughter. Baldwin will face trial on an involuntary manslaughter charge coming up this July. The owners of a Colorado Springs funeral home where 190 decomposing bodies were found are now facing federal COVID fraud charges. According to documents unsealed today, John and Carrie Halford, who owned the Back to Nature funeral home, are accused of receiving nearly $900,000 in pandemic relief funds. Authorities say they used the money on lavish trips, luxury purchases, and cryptocurrency. The charges come on top of 190 state charges of abuse of a corpse after those decaying bodies were found late last year. The owners have not yet entered pleas. A procession was held this afternoon to honor a Los Angeles firefighter trainee who was killed on his way to the training site. As Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez tells us, the young man was struck and killed as he tried to help the victims of a freeway crash.
Here they come.
Firefighters lined up along overpasses to pay their respects as the procession drove by carrying the body of a young man training to join the ranks of LA City Fire. He died trying to do the right thing while driving on his way to training.
He was along the 101 northbound near Vineland and Studio City when he came across a traffic collision. And the preliminary information is that he got out likely to render aid, to assist those in need and assess the situation, and he most likely was struck by another vehicle.
He was on his way to the drill tower at Station 81, where all training was canceled, as just about every firefighter not working an active call showed up at the coroner's office to meet the procession. Also waiting here, the trainee's family, including his father, also a firefighter.
It's an opportunity for us to see the courage that he was likely giving as he steps out to render aid to help others, and really the courage of first responders all over that routinely help those we are sworn to serve.
And that was Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez reporting for us tonight. The trainee who died today was identified late in the day as 22-year-old Jacob Fuerte. The deadly crash is now being investigated as a hit and run. 4 people, including an infant and child, were killed in a fiery crash in California's Central Valley over the weekend. The California Highway Patrol says a minivan overturned and caught fire on State Route 120 near Manteca. More than a dozen people tried to push that burning vehicle upright in an effort to help the 7 people who were inside. Along with the infant and child, a man and woman were killed in that crash. 3 other children were rescued and sent to the hospital with major injuries. Authorities are continuing to work tonight to figure out what caused that crash. Coming up here on West Coast Wrap, the legal fight over homeless encampments in one Oregon town now heads to the Supreme Court. We'll tell you what's at stake in this case. Also, car buyers are being warned about a shakeup in the EV market. We'll break down what's driving the changes.
And over parts of the West enjoying dry, warmer weather. I'll have a look at what we can expect in the days ahead coming up.
House Republicans are intending to send articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to the U.S. Senate tomorrow. They're accusing Mayorkas of refusing to enforce immigration laws and lying to Congress about the situation at the southern border. The Department of Homeland Security insists there are no legitimate constitutional grounds for impeachment. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has criticized the impeachment effort. Republicans say they're concerned he and fellow Democrats will work to dismiss the case without a trial. Tesla is planning to lay off more than 10% of its workforce because of weak first quarter deliveries. Fox 10's Steve Nielsen tells us how those job cuts may affect the EV industry.
Seems like you see Teslas on the road everywhere now. The industry has really sped up, especially in the last few years in Arizona. So why the layoffs?
In this building, Carl Kaslik sees potential.
We are preparing for what's to come. We have a similar facility in California, but just moved in Phoenix here at about triple the size of the building that we were in, to be able to
preparing for the EV charging demand. At Watt Logic, they help residential and commercial properties find solutions to EV charging needs. They're expanding and they're hiring, but it comes at an uneasy time in the industry. Monday, Tesla laid off more than 10% of their workforce.
Just out of the blue, they laid me off.
Is this a Tesla-specific problem?
No, it's definitely not. I mean, the whole EV industry is kind of catching their breath.
Arizona State University researcher Stephen Paulzine says demand has hit a bump between early adopters and the rest of the population.
The trend is towards more EVs. The pace of the trend is really what's come into question.
The EV industry in Arizona seems unconcerned.
All right, so this is the charging cable.
Brian Ritter started this business, Evergency, with his pickup truck, offering emergency charges on the go for drivers who run out of juice.
There's really no going backwards at this point. I think everyone knows, whether you like it or not, electric vehicles are the future, and it's going to be growing no matter what.
Carl at Watt Logic says more layoffs might be on the way at other companies.
I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more of that in even the weeks and months to come.
But layoffs elsewhere haven't deterred his vision for this space.
The momentum is happening so fast that it's coming. It's just I think we're hitting this cycle where you have the early adopter curve kind of settling, and you have the general population starting to adopt. And so I think it's only natural in a market like this, any other technology market, that we're going to see kind of that blip on the radar.
Carl says anyone who was laid off today probably won't be out of work for very long. He says he's actually already seen a few resumes from people because their skills are in high demand. Steve Nielsen, Fox 10.
In Hawaii, recovery crews are making progress on the storm-battered island of Kauai. They were able to reopen one lane of the Wailua River Bridge today. A drill rig fell on that bridge during strong storms back on Friday. Since that time, Department of Transportation crews have been working to clear debris from the bridge. Crews expect to shut down the bridge once again overnight to continue some of that work. People in the Pacific Northwest are getting their work week started off with some new storms. Here is a live look at Seattle, where showers have been on and off all throughout the afternoon. For more, let's bring in KTVU meteorologist Rosemary Orozco, who is tracking how long that wet weather pattern will stick around up in the Pacific Northwest. Rosemary?
Yes, Alex, at least through tomorrow. Here's another view over Seattle this afternoon, where the afternoon high only 56 degrees. So the scattered showers, the snow in the mountains continues over areas of the Pacific Northwest, as you can see right in here. We also have the inner Mountain West continuing with some rain and some snow. This storm was parked over California over the weekend, bringing a very wintry-like weather to parts of California with snow levels below 4,000 feet. This is going to remain intact to impact areas of the Pacific Northwest for tomorrow. Meanwhile, this system will eventually push out, but could still bring some lingering showers and soggy weather to areas of the Intermountain West for tomorrow. Meanwhile, areas of California, Nevada, and into the desert Southwest, a warming trend kicked off today with some hot weather over areas of Arizona. I'll show you that coming up. This high pressure and the ridge is expected to strengthen as we get into the next couple of days, bringing in the warmer weather and keeping this area dry as well. So California, Nevada, and in the desert Southwest, not going to see any wet weather in the next few days. Here's a look at the forecast for tomorrow morning. Notice areas of the Pacific Northwest, just a little bit going on farther to the north in Canada, seeing most of it. And then over towards areas of Denver, we've got a few scattered showers lingering before it finally pushes out. Here's the ridge right in here that will be strengthening over the west, bringing unseasonably warm weather to areas over California. When it comes to that moisture out there for tomorrow and the rainfall amounts, less than a quarter inch still remaining in place for areas like Washington, and then over towards the areas of Denver, expected to pick up less than 0.2 of an inch. We'll go with 15/100ths or so. So here's a look at the outlook for tomorrow and the next few days. Notice the cool weather sticking around over areas of Seattle through about Thursday. Just a little bit of a bump in the temperatures, getting to some mild weather finally. Meanwhile, the state of California looking good with temperatures in the upper 60s to low 70s for areas near the Bay, and Southern California enjoying mid to upper 70s. Meanwhile, Arizona going to be a toasty one, upper 80s for tomorrow, low to mid 90s expected by Wednesday and Thursday. Alex?
All right, Rosemary, thank you. A legal fight in Oregon over homeless encampments is set to be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. It all centers on a small town north of Medford that began issuing citations to people sleeping in public places. Fox 12's Ted Lindner talked with people in that community about the legal dispute that's getting national attention.
With rates of homelessness surging, cities across the country are trying to combat the crisis.
The situation's only escalating, and we're seeing more and more people unhoused.
The latest federal data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development reveals an alarming 12% increase in homelessness from 2022 to 2023.
At the same time, we're seeing more and more friction and frustration from community members.
But for years, leaders in several states said their hands have been mostly tied. Back in 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision stating it's unconstitutional to issue criminal citations to homeless people for sleeping outside if there are not enough shelter beds available. In 2022, the court ruled civil citations are also not permitted.
If these civil or criminal penalties can be enforced, it will likely go back to a status quo of cycles of incarceration, which also facilitates cycles of homelessness.
Fed up over a lack of progress, the small Oregon town of Grants Pass is taking the fight all the way to the Supreme Court. On April 22nd, Supreme Court justices are set to hear the town's case about being able to implement penalties to reduce the number of homeless camps. If the Supreme Court decides to overturn the decisions from the appeals court, it could change how Oregon and the rest of the nation can address homelessness.
Maybe then we can start policing the parks again, but we still have like 200 people who have to go somewhere. And so I just don't really see how that resolves the issue.
Ted Lindner, Fox News.
Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, the Arizona Coyotes one step closer to relocating to Utah. The key hurdle that's been cleared to move the NHL team, and the important vote that's coming up. The NHL has taken another key step toward relocating the Arizona Coyotes to Utah. The NHL's executive committee has reportedly approved the move to Salt Lake City, which will now be voted on by the league's board of governors, which includes all team owners. Ticket prices for the final Coyotes game in Tempe outside Phoenix have jumped amid rumors of the team's impending move.
I was like, okay, I just got to buy a ticket. And then thank God, because the next day they started jumping up to like $3,000 each.
No official announcement has been made, but Coyotes general manager Bill Armstrong informed the team on Friday that the franchise will be moving to Salt Lake City. The Coyotes owner is reportedly selling the team for $1 billion. Service members were welcomed home at Hill Air Force Base in Utah after a 6-month mission overseas. Fox 13's Darienne DeBrule spoke to families as they waited for their loved ones to return.
Like most girls their age,
I'm 10. I'm 7.
Evelyn and Emma Lemon love to draw.
I'm going to do polka dots.
But Sunday morning, they weren't just doodling hearts and stars.
Mommy's going to like that.
They were making a welcome home sign for their dad.
Are you going to write Dad in the middle? Can I write Dad? You write Dad.
For almost 6 months, Emma and Evelyn's dad was deployed in Japan, along with around 300 other airmen from Hill Air Force Base's 388th and 419th Fighter Wings.
They worked with our partners and allies to deter any kind of instability that could happen in the Pacific region.
Sunday morning was the big day. How excited are you to see him?
Pretty excited.
The day dozens of families and friends were reunited with their airmen.
It is awesome. Glad to have him back home. We missed him.
6 months. Although the past 6 months there were special days and memories missed,
this kid was so small. All of them were so small.
I mean, he missed his first birthday.
the hugs, tears, and signs Sunday are just an example of the saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Did he like your sign?
Oh, it's an awesome sign.
At Hill Air Force Base, Darienne DeBrule, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Finally tonight, a World War II veteran in Southern California is turning 104 years old tomorrow. Vernon Ricks lives in a senior community in Thousand Oaks. He served as a gunner in the Army in World War II. Rick's birthday is tomorrow, but friends and family, well, they celebrated the big milestone with a party over this past weekend. Vernon was born in Glendale and graduated from Burbank High School in 1938. And we want to wish Vernon a very happy birthday. That does it for West Coast Wrap. We appreciate you watching tonight. And a reminder before we go, you can keep up to date on all the stories we are covering at our website, westcoastwrap.com. And you can stream our shows right there on your smart TV by downloading the Fox Local app. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.